Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our Premier Solutions Engineer at Alpha. Today, Dion is going to be continuing his discussion on Pusher, which I happen to know is going to be a really interesting session today. So if you weren't paying attention to the other ones, this is the one you want to pay attention to. We're also here, of course, to answer your questions. You can enter those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. And of course, you can always send us an email at any time to guides, G-U-I-D-E-S, @alphasoftware.com. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm really looking forward. So we sent out a tweet today about what we're doing. This is going to be a cool session. I hope
I haven't oversold it.
It better be good, Dion.
But yeah, so indeed. By the way, just a real quick note, it's sort of a, feel free to loot today's content by sending us an email at guides@alphasoftware.com. We'll send it right to you so you can see all the code and everything else so you can recreate it yourself. It's a very simple database and stuff like that, but please.
I see what you did there, although I don't necessarily approve.
I know, it was, maybe too soon, so I know it's pretty crazy. So first, I want to just remind everybody, coming up is the Alpha DevCon 2020, this 3-day virtual event. And again, Alpha was ahead of the curve and we'll be attending later this year. And it's amazing, we're already in June and we're only talking a few months away. And if you haven't signed up, go register now. It's super awesome. We have a lot of really cool things to see and to do, and some great training topics like you see today will be covered. And I think you're going to really enjoy it. And again, it's virtual, so you'll be able to save costs on travel and everything else associated with that. You can see all the information here at the Alpha website. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and go into the chat window and put in the content there, go from there. And I think you'll really enjoy it. If you have an interest on doing two things, one is extending your existing skill set with things that you may or may not know or are capable. That's one of the great things that is available on the DevCon. The others will be presenting the roadmap. We'll also be presenting a lot of new capabilities that are coming down the road, integrations with Transform and new Alpha Cloud capabilities and other things that just going to make your life easier. So we really recommend attending it. It's, again, I think it will pay back many times over the cost of attendance. So in order to do it, just go to there, hit register now, get signed up, and we hope to see you there. I'll be there, Dave will be there, Sarah will be there, and a lot more smarter people will be there than us in terms of the developers and the other people. So I don't mean to undersell.
That's not a high bar there, dude.
Everybody's like, well, you had me till that moment, Dion. And then I said, okay, maybe I can spend my time more profitably elsewhere. Anyway, so with that, also really cool stuff is afoot in the marketplace. Everything is going cloud. I don't know if you've seen, obviously, if anything, this pandemic has driven transformation in terms of a lot of ways people work. I mean, the growth of platforms such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams, etc. So what's a very core important thing is that when you look at how you develop and deploy Alpha applications, up to now, we kind of came out of a desktop paradigm and that was the focus, but the reality is it's switching very quickly because businesses are moving on to the cloud. They're expecting cloud-based resources. So the Alpha Cloud is a critical component of that. That's why we'll be talking a lot about that at Alpha DevCon and how to transition, how to start using Alpha Cloud. We'll also be talking about things like API development and using it to build and deploy APIs, which is a very powerful way for you to speed up your development process. So what's going on out in the marketplace is really a momentum towards cloud deployment, and Alpha is going to be able to help you get there and help you succeed, and more importantly, reduce a lot of the administrative and other stuff you have to do. The less stuff you can do and the more time you spend developing your applications, working with your clients and your customers, the better it will be. And some of the indicators of where that's going, I mean, Microsoft has been just amazing at watching what's gone on with Microsoft over the last couple of years. I mean, I came out of the 90s, I saw how they operated, what they did, and the reality is it's a whole different ballgame, and it's showing up in their numbers. The driving of their Azure platform and Teams and other things like that is pretty amazing. But one of the things I thought was the most fascinating aspect of the Windows or actually Microsoft's behavior is the embracing of other technologies. So for example, is that if you saw the recent build, you can now run Linux inside your window, and you have like a native Linux environment, and all this other stuff that in the 90s you would have just dropped over dead if you heard them doing anything like that. But they are really saying, hey, we are here to service customers and get them onto our platform, and whatever they're using, we'll help them get there. And another thing I thought that was very fascinating, which is actually going to work great for us, is that the new Chromium Edge driven Microsoft Edge. So Chromium Engine is what's below Chrome. So Chrome is kind of the de facto standard web browser now. Microsoft about a year or two ago just said, okay, we're not going to try and fight this. We're going to basically license that core technology. So the beauty is now Chrome and Edge, which are going to become really the number 1 and 2 kind of platforms out there, are really using the same underlying engine, which is good for you as a developer because it gets rid of all that, well, it works on IE, but it doesn't work here, or it does this, it doesn't that. And you'll see one of the announcements I saw this week was the fact that now it used to be you downloaded Edge, no more. When people install Windows 10, which is still a lot of people, it automatically pushes Edge to the user, so they're in there. So a lot of these cool things are going on. We'll be talking about those trends, how to take advantage of them in the DevCon, so please join us. And for the rest of the year, we'll be also doing webinars on things that will really focus on how you can move more cloud-oriented and really get your head around APIs and cloud and off to the races. You'll really enjoy it over time. Okay. So with that said, let's talk about today. We're again going to follow up on our discussion of a user interface capability of notifications. So last week we did a demonstration of we talked a little bit about how we're transitioning away from WebSockets, which was really linked to .NET and other things like that, to more of a cloud oriented. Again, this is all part of a theme in terms of we want to empower and not limit our developers in terms of what they can do. So if we can't do it, we're going to recommend a third-party product that's going to do it. And you saw last week we created a solution using Pusher where basically you could use a notification process where when something happens, the server can push notifications out to the clients instead of the clients having to call back in on a polling basis to update it. And now we're going to take that to the next level and show you something very interesting and very entertaining along with that. I'm going to ask that, and this is going to be a super bonus. After I'm going to go through this presentation today, but there's one critical flaw in my overall implementation. I'm not going to tell you what it is, and I want people to see if they can just see what is that flaw and how we could address it. So again, we'll see if anybody's sleeping, anybody's awake, we'll see who's really paying attention there. So again, you'll see, I'm going to show this demonstration, show you how to build it, but there is a critical flaw that I think we could address and improve it, but I'm not going to give you the hint of what it is. So today we're going to do demonstration number 2. And this involves something I really enjoy and love, pizza. By the way, if anybody doesn't like pizza, I'd like you to just go ahead and leave now. Just go, bye. If you're not a pizza lover, this is not the demonstration for you. But I was reading some articles about what are the most popular toppings for pizza out there. And I'll pull it up in a few minutes here of what the industry is, but I thought, that's national and this, that. I'd rather, I don't know about you, Dave, but I really like to know my developers, and I'd really like to get an idea of what are my favorite toppings of my developers, the people who attend these sessions, versus the generic person in the street. Right. So we built a demonstration. It's a pizza voting app. Actually, it's online voting for pizza toppings. Basically, this will be an app that allows you to vote, and then it will show you the overall voting through chart updates in your user interface. And let me go ahead and demonstrate what it looks like right now. So I'm going to jump over into my development environment. I'm going to open up my pizza voting system. So you'll see here we have a wonderful icon, free, online. You'll see we have a list control here. Let me scoot this over so I can see it okay. So you can see here are popular toppings. I was going to include an image on each one, but just ran out of time. So here are your different toppings: pepperoni, mushrooms, onions, sausage, bacon, extra cheese, black olives, green peppers, pineapple, and spinach. So this allows you to vote, and you vote by clicking on this little, I've got a voice, I'm going to say it. So let's start right out of the gate. Let's go pepperoni. So you'll see that it's registered my vote, and check this out. It actually updated my pizza to show what the vote is. Now, the reality is what happened is I went back and wrote into the database a record saying what my vote was. And then the system, the server said, oh, there's a new vote. Okay, let's send out a pusher notification to anybody who's watching the voting and update this. So let's go ahead and put in onions. So you'll see now it updates there. So the reality is this list control has no bearing on this particular, there's no interaction between this list control and here. So to make it fun, what I'm going to do now, so bear with me. Let's go ahead and pause my screen sharing for a second while I grab that. Okay. And we'll go here. Okay. Check this out. Okay, so I've here, this is on my virtual machine development environment. Here's my browser on my Mac. Hey, look, it's already there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm copying this, gonna put it in the chat window, and I'm just gonna sit back because I know our developers have a huge amount of initiative and self-drive, and they don't need to be handheld. They know what to do. They know how to do these things.
All right.
Dun, 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 dun.
Pizza voting. Clicking on the link.
Yeah, and it's on the little person. Probably should do it on the row kind of thing.
I don't know. It's taking a moment. It looks like we're all trying to hit it at the same time.
Yep, I've got a low-end server, so that kind of may be the situation. You'll see a little message when it comes back and say it's been.
All right, it's thinking about it. It's thinking about it. We've got to get you on the cloud, man.
On the Alpha Cloud, yes.
We wouldn't have these problems. All right. Yep. It's loading.
Now pushers probably. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go.
Oh my gosh.
Looks
yes.
like pepperoni's in the lead. Pepperoni's in the lead. It looks like bacon. Whoa, look at bacon go. Wow,
nice.
Bacon I think is more than pepperoni. That's surprising to me.
You know what is not surprising is pineapple.
Come on, spinach. I know.
No one has chosen it, you know?
Yeah, I know. Come on, spinach. Popeye. Look at that. Interesting. So pepperoni, mushrooms, and okay, sauce. Well, bacon's still up there. Wow, look, there's a lot of bacon going on there. I know there. But check this out. This is so cool. Now, obviously, I would probably host this on Alpha Cloud so you get a little more better performance and stuff like that. I think the lag is that it's writing the database. And actually, I'll explain a little bit more how we can probably improve the speed. But check it out. It looks like bacon's going to win there. Man, I find that surprising, Dave. I honestly thought pepperoni or sausage was going to win.
I thought it would be pepperoni and sausage. Yeah.
But notice my hands are not touching any. My hands are, off the keyboard, off the mouse. It is just updating all the time. So all kidding aside, let's say you had a service representative dashboard and you wanted to notify them, keep them of like open cases, open issues. Let's say you had customers. You want to give them, let's say, and again, this is a chart, but there could be other visualizations that are being updated. And again, it's really straightforward. And we're going to walk through building this today and show you, and I'll give you all the code and everything else. But I thought we'd have a lot of fun with this. Oh, look, mushrooms has really come up. Interesting. There's sort of a balance between pepperoni, mushrooms, sausage, and bacon. So obviously heavy meat eaters that are involved with our developer community. So we're learning a lot of that. And I'm surprised actually green peppers. Pineapple's not bad. Yeah, but spinach, come on, people. You don't listen to your moms, do you? You don't listen to your moms. All good. So feel free to keep doing that. It'll keep going in the background. But notice this is on my where you'll see, well, this is my browser sitting over here. It's all ticking away. And so as we talked about before, what's going on is when you vote, I'm writing, and I'll go into my database here, is I've got a database here, and basically what it's doing is inserting voting records. So basically it inserts a record that just puts the ingredient ID that you clicked on in that list. And you can see right now we have 111 votes. There's 123. Wow, pretty heavy voting going on there, kind of thing. And then what I did is I built a view, just to kind of show you the background, is that I built a view here. And so I'm using the database to do a lot of the things here. I've got my view vote, and the view vote is just doing a group by and giving me the number of votes per ingredient and the name there. So it's working, so the database is doing a lot of work. So I'm really doing something very simple. I'm just inserting records in there. And then when the refresh happens, my chart just looks at this data right here. So it's not doing any calculations. It's just saying, okay, and then presenting that data to it. That's how it's going to go there. So let's walk through how this was built. So I'll go to the pizza vote UX. So this is my UX, fairly straightforward. I'm using a panel layout with some panel cards. The panel cards are I've got a header area with my little, excuse me, icon and text. Then I've got a panel card here that has my voting. And then I have an area down here that has my chart that's going on there. Now, as we mentioned last week, the first thing I did before I did anything else is I went on to the pusher system, and I'll have to, hold on, I should have had that up. Let's pause for a second while I bring that up. I want to pull that up. You have to have a pusher account. Again, for all intents and purposes, it is notifications. In fact, we can look at the traffic on there. Oh, no, that's not the right one. Let's go ahead and put this up here, push. I'll get on my login there. I almost got it up. And pusher, sign in. There we go. Okay. So you can see right now, peak connection is 25, but we have 4,000 messages sent. So, this stuff can pick up after a time in terms of what's going on. So I've got 4,000 on my 200,000 that are being used on here. But my first step is I went in here, I created an app, and that app basically was what I'm going to use. And so I went and got my API keys. So that was job number one, is get this information and put into, so you have that information available. Then for my UX, I went into the properties. And again, for people who saw this last one, I apologize, it's kind of there. But you go in and you set up pusher, and you go to the pusher application, you enable it. And then in here, you put in your information. You put in your app ID, your key, your secret, etc. And then I created a new channel. And remember, a channel is a way for us to tell when I send a message out, and for people listening to the message, you can divide them into channels so that in your case, it will only listen to certain things. In this case, I only want to listen to Pizza Vote, because remember last week we did messages. Well, those may be for some other part of my system. I really don't want to listen for that. So it'll just ignore all those pieces. So this was step number one. Now, step number two is I wanted to provide my voting interface. So how did I do that is the following. You know what? I think I'm going to have to do this real quick. Pause it. I'm going to close out my there so we have a little less bandwidth so things go in there. Okay. So I'll go to my controls here. Okay. So the first thing I did is I wanted to create my voting interface. So my voting interface is very simple. It's a list control. In that list control, I'm connecting to my database and I'm just getting my ingredients. So in my database, I have a table here called ingredient, which provides the items for that list. So you can see there's an ID and a name for that. And eventually what I was going to do is add a little image. So you could put a little image in your list so it looks really sharp, but again, ran out of time. So all my list does is basically query this table and throw those up on the screen. And here's my list layout that shows basically my name. But I also created a button called vote. And the idea is that little button, when you click on it, I'm going to run an AJAX callback that I've created to insert a vote for that list item. So I run a action called vote add callback that basically says, oh, okay, you clicked on mushrooms. And then let's say you clicked on spinach, which everybody should have clicked on spinach. I'm really disappointed, but I'm going to let that be for now. And so when you click on that, basically it fires a JavaScript action here. Come on. So that's a little slow as well, everything going on here. You know what, I might. So I've got this vote add callback. And in here, I'm doing an AJAX callback that just says vote. So it's an Xbasic function. And then after that comes back, I created another one called vote add callback response, which when the Xbasic when the voting finishes or when it goes back and does its work, it just sends that and says, hey, your vote is counted. That's how you're seeing that message right there. And could be many different ways. You could also, when that's done, update some other things, etc. Now I'll come back to chart update in a moment because that's important there. So let's investigate real quick how I put together the vote. So when you click on a button in here, what I want to do is get the row you clicked on. So that's the unique ID of the ingredient. And then I want to do an insert function into the database. So now I'm going to go over to my Xbasic functions here. And I have my function vote. I don't have any error trapping, which is very bad, but there. So the important thing I do is right here, I dim my ingredient ID since it's a numeric 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I get that from my list of ingredients. So that list, the row value is the list of that. So that's all I did there was say, okay, let's grab that ingredient ID. Now, what this is then I'm doing a insert into my voting ID. Basically, I'm just saying insert a record in there with the ID that was selected. And that's how it goes in there. And then it does the view to calculate the things. Now, the cool thing is I didn't write any of this code. I would like to say I did, but I didn't. So what I did is I used the built-in function here. I'm right-clicking in the white space. I think it's because my voting stuff is still updating in the background. It's probably taking a little there. But I'm going to my Genie here, and I'm going to the Xbasic SQL Actions code generator. Now, I did that for two reasons. One is I wanted to make sure people are aware and use this function. The other is the code is written by Alpha, so I know it's much more solid than anything I can put together because it's been tested over and over and over again. So in here, I can pick one of these items here, and I pick the perform an insert action because I'm inserting a record, but that could have been an update action. And in here, and what's kind of cool is I've saved the settings. Basically, you go through a series of questions here where you select the table, you set the values you're gonna set, you set the field values, and then the primary key, and then you'll notice it writes all the code for you. So the bulk of the work is being done by Alpha there. Now I have one other last thing I need to do is once the code is done, this row right here, or this line, basically we're setting the argument value to pass into the insert. So I take that ingredient ID I got from the list, I set the argument, and then when this runs, it's going to insert it into the database. Now that's the front end. That's when you're voting, all we're doing there is doing that from that standpoint. Now, what I'm doing here is then two other things. One is, remember I said I sent back a message just saying, hey, I've done it. So I run another action because if I need to do something else, it's easier for me to do that in a JavaScript action than write custom code right here. So a common thing I'll do is create a callback action JavaScript, and then I'll have the callback result that's on the other end for maybe pass and fail. So I just put in these little simple lines to do that. But you'll notice something else I'm doing here. I'm actually, when this occurs, then on the server, I'm going to send a message out to Pusher that we showed last week on my Pizza Vote channel. And I just say, in this case, I say Pizza Vote delivered. I'll show you in a moment. It doesn't matter what I said in that message, but in this case, I just send a message. What I want to do is when a vote occurs, I want to tell Pusher, go ahead and notify all the UXs that are watching this that someone has voted somewhere in the world, and it's time for you to update your update graph and see that there. So it's really 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code to interface with Pusher. I went to Pusher, got the ID and the credentials, put it in here, and then now whenever I need to send a message out, it's a very simple message that goes from here. So that's the...
Dion, sorry, could you just walk through that function that you used there?
Oh, yes, by all means. Yeah, so...
because I'm sure it's new to most of us.
Yeah. So
Pusher send message.
Exactly. So basically, and what we can do is if you're interested in getting that information, let's see, where is it? Let's go ahead and just do this. Open up my browser. Still going. Oh, look, mushrooms, way ahead of the curve. Maybe that's the power of persuasion, yeah. So go to Alpha, documentation, and I'm going to take you there and we'll put that in. Sarah might be one step ahead of me.
Oh, she's one step ahead of you.
She's way ahead of me.
It's already in the chat.
Yeah, so there, but let's go ahead and pull it up here. There you go. The most visited site I have here. Come on, there we go. So basically it's really straightforward is that you'll notice in my case, it's got these 4 things here that are empty. I'm using this to pass in my configuration like that, the information from Pusher. But this allows you to, if I'm not mistaken, let's go right here, should have their function here. If not, we'll have to get that updated. Basically, it allows you to, you don't have to have a UX. You can actually do this in like there. Let's go to action JavaScript. That's action I wonder if we have that in there. Let's see. I'll have to find it.
Oh, take a
We'll have
look
to
at
check on that.
the take a look at the chat window. I think it's right. I think it's right
Ah,
there.
gotcha.
Oh no, I'm sorry. That does just point back to where you
Okay.
were.
Well, here you go. So
All right.
this is actually, I'm glad you brought this up. So
Okay.
because I set the values here at the UX, I just have to give it this and make these empty. But if not, if I'm going to use this like in an Xbasic class where I don't have a UX, you pass in the app key, the secret, the cluster. Those things I put at the UX, you put in here. Then what you do is you tell it whether you're going to do what's called a channel or a beam in its channel, and then you pass it, or actually, I'm sorry, you put it what channel we're sending it on. So in this case, pizza vote. And then the message right here is the actual message I want to send out. And as I mentioned, it really doesn't matter. I just want to get a message out there because I'm going to trap it and do something with it. So these would normally, if you were writing like Xbasic code in a class, you would pass in the app ID, key, secret, etc. Since I did this in the UX, I just put in this here, and it basically fills those in for me from the UX. Makes things a little simpler there. So it's a pretty simple kind of context from there. Now, so that's the front end. Person clicks on here, does an Xbasic callback, it inserts a record into the database. The database is automatically going to take care of the view for me in terms of totaling. And then I send out the pusher message to say, hey, tell everybody to update themselves. So that's the front end. Now let's talk about the back end. So the first thing I did was this, is I wanted to set up my charts. Let's go ahead and I inserted a chart. And by the way, these charts are beautiful and really easy to do. I think it's other controls. You just click here and you have JavaScript chart. Really nice feature here. So I have my JavaScript chart, and then what I did is I selected a sample chart. In my case, I wanted a pie chart. And so you can see they have all these different pie charts that are available. There's two different types of pie charts you can pick from. Again, a little time to update it. See, you can have this kind of chart or the one that I created here, but we could have been putting this in bar charts and vertical bars, semicircular waterfalls. I mean, just really, and what's cool is you can do animated stuff too, where it animates it as it goes. It takes a little more horsepower on the client, but it's available from that standpoint. So I went in and selected my chart in here. Okay, and what it did is it put in my standard JavaScript. So this is just a little piece of JavaScript. And then I need to do the following. So let's go ahead and do something real quick. I want to show you, I'm going to insert the sample chart and rebuild this right in front of you. So I'm going to go ahead and click my, the one I want here. I'm going to click OK. Okay, so you'll notice it put it in here, and I can actually preview this chart right now, and you'll see that it's got some hard-coded data. It's got a hard-coded title and hard-coded labels here. So that's what it looks here. So first I can say, let's change the title and go, I love pizza. And we can do the preview and you'll see it happens there. Now you'll notice there's two parts. There's the data for the chart, which is going to be the size of the pie element. And then there's the label, which is what's displayed here. Now, I don't want to hard code this. I want Alpha to take care of it for us. So one of the cool powers and features of the JavaScript charting library is I can create what are called data series. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this data right here. I'm going to go to select data series. I'm going to have to delete this, I think, because I already have it. So let's delete it and we'll recreate it. We'll add a data series. And I'm going to call that votes. And what a data series is basically, think of it as like a connection string. It's a connection to back-end data. And it takes a little while to get, it took me a couple times to get it, but I finally figured it out. It makes a lot of sense. Basically, it's a thing the UX manages to talk to back-end data sources or other data sources. So now I've created that. Now I can edit that. And let's go ahead and edit the data series here. And you can see I could use JavaScript there. I could even use DBF. You can actually do cross sections, which are cool, like pivot table kind of stuff. But I picked this SQL one because I wanted to say I want to drive this chart from my backend database. So I selected SQL. I selected my connection string here. In this case, I'm not using Northwind. I'm connecting to my backend database. I select the table. Now, in this case, it's not actually a table. It is a view. So I'm going to click, and I want that view vote that's already did all the totaling for me to actually come back to the data. Now the fields I want to get are the ingredient, the votes in the name, because I'm going to display the name on my tooltip or my on my labels, and I'm going to actually have the pi level there. So I'll click OK. So now it's set that up here. I could set filtering, ordering, all these little things here are doable, but that's all I need to do here. So now I've created, and you'll notice it's now green, a connection. I can have multiple ones of these. So if I had different tables I needed to go to. Now, when I clicked on here, what it's asking me for is which data series is going to populate this data here. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Then you notice it says, oh, okay, you've selected votes, but what actual information do you want to display there? So in my case, I want to show the numerical votes that are coming back from that view, not the name. So I'm going to click votes, click OK, and you'll see it writes a little piece of JavaScript that now it will actually take that query, run it for you, and return the votes into this spot here in a format that JavaScript likes. So it does a lot of work for you. You don't have to write a bunch of parsers and everything else. You say it. Now, we have our data, so this is going to show up here. In fact, I can click preview and it's going to make that database call, and you can see it's showing me my information here. But you'll notice I'm missing the tooltip. So we just go to labels, actually labels and tooltips. Notice I'm highlighting everything, including the open and closed bracket. I go back down here to data series. Now the cool thing, I've already created votes, it's good to go, so I can just go okay. And in this case, I want names instead of votes. And you'll see it's writing basically a little piece of JavaScript that's going to replace when it runs this name. And I want to do that for tooltips also so that they match. And once you got this down for one time, it's kind of just like click, click, click. It's almost always the same process you go through. Preview the chart. And now you can see it's bringing back the real data from the database. It's highlighting and giving me the names and everything else associated with it. So I can click OK. So that's how I built my chart. So basically I created a data-driven chart, did a little formatting in terms of width and height and things like that. But Alpha did all the work for me. I basically created the chart, created the data series, connected the data series to the chart. And what it will do is at any time, it will, when this runs, when I open up this UX, it's going to call back, grab the data, and then update itself for you automatically. Now, in my case, I want to be able to update this on an ongoing basis. So let's go back to JavaScript actions. And you'll notice I've created a JavaScript action called chart update. And I'm using a built-in JavaScript chart action where I basically tell it to, in my case, refresh the data. By the way, you can export data out of charts as PDF and stuff. It's really cool. But I have basically, when I trigger this, basically I want to say refresh the data and refresh my chart number 1. So that's all it does there. And so I've created that. So whenever this action JavaScript is triggered, it'll tell this chart will go back to the database, grab that data, bring it back and update the chart at that moment in time. Now I'm going to go ahead and click to see this code here. And I'm going to copy that code to the clipboard. So what this is this is the little piece of action JavaScript. Whenever this is run, it's going to trigger that update that goes on there. So I'll click copy, close it. Okay. So we have our data going in the database. We have our chart that will show it, but we're missing one last thing. We want to be listening for pusher, and when a message comes in, we want to refresh this chart. Well, very straightforward. We go to our client-side events. We look for the on pusher message, and all I did was paste that command in here. And so now whenever any message comes into this UX from pusher on the pizza vote channel, it's going to trigger that chart refresh. Now I could do other things here. I could update other fields. I could open panels. As we talked about last week, the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do with this technology. Now, very important too, I'm going to run back here real quick. You'll notice when I send the message out, I'm actually putting in a message. I did that just for informational purposes, but I'm keeping it very simple. All I'm saying is just you don't care what the message is. If something comes in on Pizza Vote, all I want you to do is refresh that chart. That's all I want you to do. But you could add another message and display it using other things. It's up to you from that standpoint. So now what happens is the following. This gets displayed. This will update with whatever the current data is in there. The person will click on that button. It'll trigger a AJAX callback. That callback will take whatever you clicked on, insert into the database. The database obviously will do all the view stuff for you. Then what will happen is in that Xbasic callback, we tell pusher, hey, by the way, we had an update. So as you notice, all of you, when anybody out there hit it, the server said, oh, send something to message. You're not dependent upon me on my UX. It's happening on the server in terms of the communication. It's going from our server to pusher, and then pusher is responsible for finding anybody out there and doing it from there. Then when that message goes out, pusher turns around and sends it back. And when that message comes back, it basically triggers this action to update the chart. And that's why you get the behavior you see now. So there you have your behavior in there. And as people do voting, as that continues going, oh, they saw the light. Everybody's going to have enormous levels of iron in their body. I'm very proud. You know, there you go. I should have gone and send $10 via PayPal just to I go at the same time. Should do that there. So very cool, and it's still going. People are still in. I appreciate everybody participating and being involved. I'm going to open it up for questions now, but I think hopefully you see where you can really transform the user experience from a pull or a, you know, I need to go do this to where you're sending it back to you. And the reality is all the modern social media platforms, this is how it works. Basically, you insert some data into a back-end system. That system says, oh, here are the people who should see that. And then they send it out to people using a pusher-like system. Most of the companies have already built that internally, like Facebook and stuff like that. You can only imagine the amount of traffic that they go through. But why do that? It's all done in its pusher. So dynamic dashboards, sending messages, alerts, being proactive. And the cool thing is that it really, and it's fun, it's visual and it's interesting. I'm using a chart here, but you could have like different colored red, green, yellow stoplights or something like that. The sky's the limit. You could show and hide different icons and other things on the screen. So you're really going to enjoy it. For instance, what I could have done is when this comes back, I could have refreshed this list also so you saw the numeric values. So you don't just see the numeric, or you just don't see it here. By the way, notice how when I hover over here, it is doing the tooltip, and that's because when I set up, remember when I set up the JavaScript chart, I said populate not only the labels, but the tooltip at the same time. So Alpha is doing all that work for me. So that is the I Love Pizza Pusher demonstration. If you're interested in this, I'll give you a backup of the database. It's really simple. And also this application right here, and you can take it and go. You'll need a pusher account, but those are free and takes a few minutes and it'll be good practice there. But I hope this has been, it was fun putting it together. And I got to tell you, you know, and this took 20 minutes to put together because Alpha did all the work for me. I mean, most of the time was just figuring out what I wanted to do because the list was easy, the Xbasic callback, it wrote all the code there. The charting was easy, and I just had to insert that one thing. So it was very straightforward for me to put this together because there's so much content in there. And as you can see, there's a little lagginess stuff here. I think if I were running on this out in Alpha Cloud, you'd see incredible bandwidth because Alpha Cloud will dynamically size itself to handle that traffic because we're bursty. In this case, at the beginning of this presentation, you saw everything lagged because all of a sudden my server got like 100 things happening at one time and really couldn't handle it. I mean, it's a very small virtual machine. It's not built for that kind of traffic, but something like Alpha Cloud would not even skip a beat. It would just take that information, handle it, and go from there. So open it for questions. I wanted to see if anybody saw the flaw in my scheme and how we possibly could fix it.
Actually, that was going to be my question is, wait, didn't you say there was some flaw in your scheme?
Yes, there's a serious flaw in this.
Okay.
But I'm going to wait to see if anybody has ideas what that flaw is. And it's not my voice. If I hear it's my voice, we're done.
Okay, so the flaw, okay, according to one of the users here, is there were too many spinach votes. That was not the flaw. Okay.
That person's name.
Allows multiple votes by one person.
That's not bad. No, that's
flaw,
yeah, you're right. An application.
But I think that, you know, if you're writing the app, you shouldn't let you do that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, what I would do is I would it would have to be I'd have to get their name, but then when you do the insert, you would insert that person. So you maybe do it by that. Right. That's true. Yep. Not the flaw. It's more of a technical implementation flaw than a user interface functional flaw. Is what I, you know, if you were really doing this right and you wanted to do, you know, to maximize the performance and everything else, there's actually a really cool way to handle this.
Very cool. Well, no
I
one has
know,
yet
isn't it
spotted
fun?
the flaw. Yeah, it's really cool.
They
Could
don't
you
have to
cover for me
say.
just one more time how
Yes.
the what events sort of like I know the script that you wrote for reloading the chart, which or refreshing the chart. But again, what is it that triggers it? In other words, how does Pusher tell Alpha Anywhere, or how do you write your app to listen for Pusher to actually run that script?
Good point. Good point. Okay. So first step, remember, is when we put in this pusher configuration,
Mhm.
behind the scenes, there's a bunch of JavaScript that runs. So when I launch this window right here, this web page calls back to Pusher and says, hey, Pusher, I'm here. This is my IP address. This is all my information. And this is the app and the channel I want to hear from you. So Pusher builds a list. And then when a message comes in, it says, oh, you're on that list. You're on the list. It sends that message back. And then there's a piece of JavaScript that Pusher handles, catches that message. Now, what Alpha does is Alpha then in the client side available or client side event, we have something called the on pusher message or notification. We'll see in a moment here.
Okay, so it's just a regular client-side event that's made to handle Pusher.
Exactly. You'll see it
I
says
got
on
it.
pusher message.
That's
So
what.
this is here, and what you can do is that when any message comes in, you can put your little JavaScript to do it. Now, as I mentioned, mine's really stupid. I don't care what the message is, even though I put a message in there. I just say update the chart. But I could have passed along the name of the mushroom. So I pop up a little message saying someone voted for mushroom. So you could include in here information that can then be used by this script to take certain decisions. So for instance, if you don't have to have a different message for everything, you can just say, oh, the message is like an alert. And in the alert, you could put what message, and then you have a stupid piece of code here that takes that incoming message and shows it to the person. Now, I use JavaScript actions as much as possible because then it keeps the JavaScript really simple here, and it's
Sure.
doing very straightforward things.
Okay, so if you did want to, for example, I think you had some fake message that was going through going, your vote was received or something like that, but you
Uh-huh.
never actually did anything with that string. Is that correct?
Correct. And in here, and
But
actually I'll show you right. Oh, I'm sorry.
but you could have, I guess, here on this on pusher message or somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. So you'll notice down here is that there's little instructions. And so what happens when it comes back is actually you can look at this thing called e-message. So I could say alert, and this is just standard JavaScript, e.message. Okay. So this is what pushers come back. So that message that I sent out that got sent out on this channel would come in, and then I could read this value and either use it to display it or do like a switch statement saying on this message, do this. So you can see the message, the channel, and the event name. So it gives you sort of what pusher sends to the UX and to the web page is all this metadata. So it's not only the message, but also what channel it's on, et cetera, because this UX could actually listen to 5 different channels and based on those channels do different things. So really flexible. So
Now,
this
from
will
a
always run.
practical point of view, you probably wouldn't want an alert, right? If you have 50 people clicking all at the same
Oh,
time,
no, no,
won't you have
no, no, no.
to?
Yeah, that's
But
why what you would
but
probably
you
do
but you
is
would think
do,
about a disclosure or something like that, something
well,
like appearing
what I
disclosure.
use and what I really like are those transient messages because they come up and
Transient
go away.
messages. Right.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
transient
that's what I
message.
was thinking of.
The other item is that you could have created like a text box and just started inserting text in there like a flowing
I
log
got you.
file,
Replace the
but
inner
make it look
HTML
massive.
of the, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what's cool is you could use some HTML tricks to make it look really cool and show you like, one thing I might do is like have another chart which says total number of votes. And as it goes, you see it counting up the total number of votes that have come in at any one time, so really fun. But the heart of it is when you register it, then Pusher will send whatever we send a Pusher will come here. It's the message, the channel, and the event name. And based on that, you are able to then use that message or take action with it or do something along those lines there.
Gotcha.
By
All
the
right.
way,
So
let's go
some
see.
someone's guessing at your flaw, by the way. The
Good.
flaw is that you are sending data back in the pusher message rather than, is that you could send the data back in the pusher message rather than hammering the server again for chart data.
Ah, get that
Close?
person. That person is absolutely correct. Yes, yes,
Ah, all
yes.
right then. Yeah.
Congratulations. Yes. Because think
Do you
about
want to
it.
explain? Do you want to explain that to the rest of us? Who
Yeah,
are,
yeah. So the
we're
idea
not
is what I
all as
want to
smart
do,
as this guy. So.
what I want to do is offload the server as much as possible. So the way it works is I've got to insert the data. So I've got to insert the data to the server. So on my front end, there's not much I can do. So I'm going to send back and run the function that's going to insert the data. And that's actually pretty fast because inserts into databases, they're optimized good from there. Then what I want to do is update the chart for everybody around here. So what I'm doing right now is when data gets updated, Pusher sends a message out to, in this case, 40, 50 people. This chart says refresh, and by the way, guess what this chart does? It calls back to the server and it says, I need to query that view to get the current view data and update myself. Well, that is now I have a second group of 50 people calling, and that's a pretty heavy one because it has to call back, the system has to query the database, has to pull that data out, has to package it up, send it back to the UX. So that's sort of, you're like hitting the server twice. So the absolutely correct assessment is what we can do is, remember, when we run the Xbasic, we have the ability to send a message back. So right now we're just sending a simple message. But what I could do is in this, I could then do a query against my view, package that up as JSON or data. It was some kind of JavaScript format, send that in the message. So now I do that call to the view once, and then I send it to Pusher, and then Pusher hands it out to everybody. And then what I would do is I would go into my chart here, and remember on my chart, when I had my data series, in my case, I selected the SQL. Let me go ahead and edit this real quick. Well, what I could do is I could use JavaScript and have a JavaScript function that reads that incoming data from Pusher. So what would happen is the data would go to Pusher, data, so that updated information need for my chart, it gets sent to all the UXs. All the UXs receive the data, and then they can do everything on the client. There's no more callbacks to the server, which is huge because I think this thing would have run much, much faster because we didn't have 100, every time someone voted, 50 people called back in to get all that data from the server. So that's what slowed this thing down. I kind of anticipated that, but I thought, well, we'll get it from there. So what I would probably do is when it comes back from Pusher, I would insert it in local storage, which is a technique where you can just say, have it in a temporary value, and then I could then run a JavaScript function to update that chart with that data. So basically what I could do, and that's where I kind of got to the point where I didn't have time to finish that out. Now, the cool thing about that is that now Pusher's doing a lot of the work. It sends out to those 50 people the updated chart data. Those 50 people's web browsers update the chart with the latest information, and then everybody else, then the server's done. So it's one and done as far as the server. A call to insert the record, gather the current data, send it out to Pusher, everything gets updated. So great catch. Good job, whoever found that out. And again, you could see where that could increase the performance by an order of magnitude because we've now reduced the traffic enormously on our server. We're letting Pusher and the clients do all the work, and therefore your server, you don't need as big a server. People get better responsiveness in terms of these activities and along those lines from there. So that good catch. Way to go. Awesome.
Very cool. So going back just a little bit, we were talking about how you could get messages passed in instead of having the alert boxes, which would be silly. You could do transient messages, or you suggested it could be done in a text box, and you could sort of have like a rolling log of all the stuff that goes through. Can you go a little bit into the programming, or at least point in the right
Oh,
direction
sure,
for what
sure.
would be
So let's
necessary to do
let's
something like that?
let's try that. So
All right.
where are we going to put that? Do I have room on this one here? We'll put it down here. I'm going to go ahead and add another panel card.
All right.
And in there, and again, I think it's because it's still updating the charts and stuff like that. That's what's going on. All the spinach levers are slowing me down here. So in here, I could go ahead and put in a text area, and we'll call this messages. Okay. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go back to my JavaScript function here. I'm sorry, my client side of event here. And I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say var message is equal to, and then e dot, let's see, I want to make sure it's message. Okay, so that's going to store what comes back from our friends at Pusher. Now I'm going to do var, let's call it messages is equal to, and then we're going to put in here dialog.object, get value, and I want to grab whatever's in my messages field. So remember I have that field there, so this allows me to get it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say var messages is equal to, or I'm sorry, not var messages, but let's go ahead and just go messages is equal to messages plus e dot message. And I probably need to put in there a carriage return or a new line. And I'm just going to skip that for right now. Then what I can do is I can just go dialog.object, set value, and I'm going to set the value of my messages to my now updated new messages. Okay? So basically I'm grabbing the incoming message. I am then grabbing what is currently in that field on the user interface. I'm adding that together. So now I have kind of a running log, and then I'm updating that information, and I'm also saying do the chart update. So I'm going to save that. And this will take a moment. And I'll go ahead and publish it so everybody can enjoy it at one time. And again, I think it's just stuff still happening. Oh yeah, because this is still handling people clicking and stuff. So normally it's not this slow.
Speaking of which, someone asked about the cloud and wondered if we had a demo or something like that that we can do. I think we have done a webinar Wednesday about that. But if you'd like more information on the cloud, please send an email to guides, G-Y-D-E-S, at alphasoftware.com, and we can point you to the resources explaining what it does, how it works, and how to get a demo.
Absolutely. Egans. Man, yeah, this is the server and the development environment. Highly recommended. Don't do that. Don't do as I do. Do as I say. Young man, eat your spinach. Eat your spinach. Anyway, we should just call this the welcome to the dad webinar. I do like that series of ads while this is saving, and I need to publish it in a moment. But that series of ads, I think it's for an insurance company that talking about don't be a dad, you know, like when you get insurance, and showing people like when they get insurance all become really boring and like turn off the lights and stuff. Egats. Well, this is how you do it. This will be included in here. We'll check it out there. Yeah, I think my server is just, you know, I could like just watch this. Boom. Okay. What that do, it will recycle the server. And that should speed things up pretty good. So if anybody's on there, you may get a server error right now because I'm just basically using always up to recycle the server. Yeah. Again, like Alpha Cloud for that. And again, that's what, you know, that's the cool thing is you scale, you just don't have to worry about your server stuff.
All right.
So let's, other questions, while I'm doing this, are there any other questions we can kind of go on? I don't
yeah, sure. Let's see what we've got here. This one is a little bit different, and it has to do with, can you integrate audio and video calls or chat platforms into your apps?
Gotcha. Well, absolutely. And in fact, Pusher, even though we've integrated just the messaging size, does have like a
does it have audio as well?
No, not audio, but
okay.
What that usually, there's two usually ways you can do it. Is one is through like an iframe. You know, that's just a really not exactly the best way to go in the world. But obviously the other option you have is getting third-party JavaScript components. Usually right now the world is JavaScript on web, So they'll often give you, like, for instance, I was working recently on a BI tool, a business intelligence tool,
Mhm.
and they said, oh, you can, integrate like the graphs and charts and everything else like that into the app by just including this JavaScript library and putting some commands in there. So what you'll find is for most of those kind of applications, there will be what's called an API, or not an API, but a developer's kit. And then the developer's kit will include sample code that allows you to do things like, insert it in your, and then what you would do is you would insert it, if you want to put it in a UX, you could actually go to properties here, and in here, they'll give you a JavaScript library usually. So you'll have, notice the JavaScript link file. So I could put that linked file that they want. You got to include that in your there. And then inside of your controls, usually they'll have a piece of JavaScript or something like that. So I know that's kind of vague, but that's really where the world's going, is that basically it's a Java, like the third-party web components are almost always JavaScript. So they'll include a library that you need to link in. And then along with that will be some sample code that you can install that to include like a window. And usually what's interesting is usually it's a URL you're hitting, and in that URL you put like query stuff to show, you put like a query to tell it how to configure itself. So now I have messages here. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but we should start seeing it may error out.
Apparently, you may have left out a semicolon in your JavaScript,
Yeah.
according to
Oh,
Glenn.
no, I did not, Glenn.
I think you did.
Spoke
I
too
trust Glenn.
soon. Look.
I
Yes, I did
know.
leave out a
It is,
semicolon.
but it is working.
Yep.
Look at
So,
that. A running thing.
yep. So when you see this is just a pending messages on here. So every time you notice that this is the outgoing, it updates the chart and updates here. So you could have that ongoing cool like matrix log going on of what's going out there. And again, the
Right,
neat thing is that,
green on black kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, and the cool thing too is that this message was in it. So everything, once this came in, all of this was handled on the client. So the server didn't do anything. I mean, once I sent it out to Pusher, I was done. And that would be the concept of, I would include there the data for this chart and update that charter from the incoming message. And then you'll see a performance by factor of 1,000, because that you just aren't hitting the server as much. The server's just insert a record, query it, and you're already connected to the database, so everything's already kind of in memory, ready to go. So
Yeah.
that round trip is really fast, spit it out to Pusher, and then off to the races from there.
Wow. Very, very good. Let me see if I can find another question related.
Yes.
There's a lot of them here. A couple people pointing out some neat things that they showed off, like that ability to insert Xbasic code to do the SQL queries, which I've known about probably only for about a year, and I think it's been in much longer than that. I was like, wow, that's it was very cool.
It's actually very handy. There's a couple things you want to do, and I didn't do here, but for instance, like if an error occurs, it basically just closes the connection and ends the process. So you'll probably end up doing a little adjustments to have better error handling things there. But the other thing I like about it a lot, especially when you start doing API work and things like that, is that, which is super powerful. You can do updates, insert, and deletes, but also you can query the SQL database and it will return JSON data. So if you're doing API stuff, you can say, give me a list of orders, and then it turns that into JSON and you're done. So you don't have to write a lot of code. So and also hierarchical. So it's really, I use it all the time. This is one of my go-to things. And I didn't show you earlier, but remember when I was talking about insert action? So when you go through this, and this will only take a moment, is that, okay, so I have to go through here and build this. So I say connection string, and I think what's happening is people are starting to vote again. So I select my connection string, and then I select my table name and go all that stuff there. And then after I go through these series of steps, it will generate the code. And I'm good, I've got that there. And then I copy that code and paste it in. But sometimes I go, oh, I wanted another field. Well, what you can do is after you get this configured, you can click this save settings, and I'll click load here and open this here just so you can see what it is. So here's my fully spec'd out, and here's the code. I could save this, save it as something, and the next time I come in here, I don't have to go step through all these things to get back to where I was. So that's really powerful, because often you'll go, oh, you know what, I want to add another field. Oh, I want to delete a field. Oh, I want to modify it a little bit. Well, then you just go in here, regenerate this code, and you're good to go. And you can save and load those settings. So it really helps out. And I use this a lot too, because this code is very, thought out. It's structured properly by the development team, so it runs very well. The only thing I do caution is that if you get an error, nothing ever happens because it just basically takes the error text and then just stops. Whereas you'd probably want to use the error generate code to say, okay, show the user there's an error, or show the developer, or write it to a log or something like that. Send it to Pusher. Here's my errors.
Excellent. Dion, thanks
Okay.
very much.
Thank
Outstanding
you.
presentation. Thank you everyone who showed up and kept it lively and overloaded Dion's server. It was an awful lot of fun.
Oh, boy, I can't wait to
Again,
see
if
my
you want
bill
a
on that
copy,
bad boy.
if you want a copy of today's component, please send an email to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. And of course, if you have any questions, you can use that same address. Till next Wednesday, thanks very much for attending. Hope you have a great week and stay well. Bye-bye.